Hey, Rondo
Indeed.
Compared with the Indie Coach podcast. I'm here with my new friend, Olivier French.
Yes.
Olivier is with the film company. That is his creation. So, Olivier, just to kind of dive in, I know we were doing that a little bit off screen already, but just to kind of give people a little bit of your backstory and how you got started into the filmmaking journey.
Yes. It's been a long journey and it continues. Yeah, I've done many things. I've worked as an actor. I've worked as a director. I've worked as a producer. I've worked in post-production. I'm very familiar with the whole aspect of filmmaking, from, being in front of the camera and behind the camera. I've also did a few years film financing, so I'm very familiar with that whole ecosystem and how it works. So yeah, everything from acting to financing to distribution to production is kind of my wheelhouse. Also, like 5 years ago, when podcasts like yours started kind of hitting, I created a couple of podcasts. We had a podcast called Conversations with Charlie, with a friend of mine who's a post production supervisor out of New York City. And very well connected. And our first podcast was with Keanu Reeves, just to give you
Oh,
an idea.
cool.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So we interviewed a bunch of actors, producers, directors, and whatnot. So I'm familiar with that whole online ecosystem as well. And then the film code came about because 6 months ago, I really started getting into AI. I mean, beyond GPT, and I started seeing what was coming down the track in terms of image generation, video generation. And I knew that it was coming to film. Unlike many filmmakers, I'm not afraid of technology. I embrace it, try to be one of the guys who embraces it first. I mean, they said a lot of things about the digital camera when it came out. It was
Right.
going to kill the industry, and obviously it didn't.
Yep.
So I embraced AI insofar as I started doing a lot of research and teaching myself about what was going on, who the main players were, where I thought it was going. And then 6 months ago, I launched the Film Co. And the whole idea behind the Film Co was to basically approach it as a traditional film company that's really AI smart. It
Hmm.
wasn't to be an all completely AI film company because I'm still very much a traditionalist when it comes to film. I mean, I
Sure.
love film, passionate about film and acting and whatnot. And I just wanted to be at the forefront of what was happening. And here we are.
Yeah, no, here we are indeed for sure. What
Yeah.
I can certainly understand, and I'm in the same boat as you. I don't demonize AI, and I also
No.
understand the genie's out of the bottle. Even if we wanted to kind of slow it down, it's really being
Yeah.
by technology, not by the entertainment industry. So we really
Right.
don't have a say. So I certainly can sympathize with the property rights and those things and all that. And I do hope that they get worked out. But to think that the genie's going to go back
I
in,
will.
it's just, yeah,
No.
exactly. It just, there needs to be a little bit more time. I do think it's going to get worked out. What is kind of the main pain point that you're seeing amongst filmmakers where Filmco can come in and kind of align and help with kind of, what was the main problem, if you will, that
Well, yeah. Okay, the film industry itself is a big it's a beast, right? It's
Mhm.
very tough. It's very tough to make it in film, whatever you're doing, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera. I forget the exact percentages of people that actually make all the money. And if you want to term that as being successful or making a living out of it, it's a small percentage. What I always found frustrating was it's the gatekeeping scenario. If you want to work with the studios, there's the gatekeepers. It really is an inside game. Sure, some people get lucky. They might do a film for Sundance, gets picked up. Next thing you know, they're doing a comic book movie or whatever. But generally speaking, it's very difficult, which is fine. I have no problem with that, right? So as I think this started for me. It started in 2012. I've been a regular to the Cannes Film Festival. I've been to like 15 of them. I'm not there this year. It's on at the moment, but I've been to quite a number. And I remember back in 2012 doing an interview with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how things were progressing to the small screen, that the big screen was coming to the small screen. It really was the beginning of that era, where things went to streaming and then, Netflix, and we know the history of that. So the main pain points are, how do you get a film made? How do you finance it? How do you distribute it? The main things. You obviously there are certain things that AI doesn't alleviate. A good script is a good script, right? You have an amount of talent to write a good script. Once you get your script done, then you have to package it. That means, putting together a cast, a director, and so on and so forth. And then you have to finance it, which is usually the most difficult step, and then and in financing the film, you will, if you've got your cast together and you get lucky a little bit, maybe you'll do some pre-sales at a festival and you'll get part of your distribution done. But it's all very much a hodgepodge of, you pre-sell UK and then you keep the US open for when it's done and gets a buzz. And it's a very complicated system. And it's, very, everyone's self-interested. There's no, which is, again, I'm not saying these things as criticism, it's just as observations, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of self-interest. The distributors are kind of taking care of themselves, the producers are taking care of themselves. There's really not that much cooperation per se. And again, I'd say that with a little bit of an asterisk because there is a very strong community within film, within independent film, but it's just tough to get through. So what I saw coming down the pipe with AI, not just with generative AI, but with what AI was able to do and some of the tools that were being developed was it would alleviate, save you a lot of time, right? If you learn how to use the tools, it would save you time, which means it would save you money. So even if you start from the screenwriting process, I mean, we just finished an action script, which we're developing into a franchise. And then I will also be acting, right? So I worked with a director on the script. Still took us over a month to write the script. I mean, the project itself has a history of 5 years, but we had to kind of reboot it, COVID and all that, right?
Right.
So we wrote a new script. Still took us a month, but did we use AI? Sure. If you have an action script and you punch in the parameters of the action with what you're trying to do, and it'll give you a couple of scenarios, and you can grab those scenarios and then write your script. So is it writing a script? No. But is it giving you some options? Sure. Right.
Mhm.
And then in terms of pre-production, production, and post-production, what you can do now with AI in terms of cost savings and also creative ability, with even with our film, to do the VFX, to blow up a boat or blow up a car or do or any of the effects used to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars and a lot of time. Now you can literally do it with with an app on your laptop. I mean,
Right.
I'm not downplaying the skills in any of these circumstances. You still need a VFX guy who knows what he's doing and whatnot. But if you're reducing $100,000 to 5 grand or 10 grand, you can make a movie for five that's going to look like 50. So that's what we're able to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it is crazy. I mean, a year ago, they showed us what Will Smith looked like eating that bowl of spaghetti, and it looked ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Now they it's
Mm-hmm.
input 1 year later, and it looks exactly like Will Smith eating spaghetti. I mean, so
Yeah.
has come a long way. I remember like it's so far ago. Just a year ago,
Yeah.
AI couldn't get hands right 100%. Now the hands
Ah,
are perfect,
that was always the giveaway, right? The fingers was always the
Yep.
giveaway. Yeah.
Was always the giveaway. And now just about every time it's nailing
Yeah.
it. Um, where do you see filmmakers blowing it, messing up? Where do you see filmmakers messing up? And then where do you see Hollywood blowing it and messing up?
Well, first of all, look, there's two ways three ways we're approaching it. Number one, we want to use AI as a tool on filmmaking. Like, we're
Hmm.
not out to do AI feature films. I don't think AI is quite there yet anyway, technology wise. But we're using it in VFX, in production, and this, that, and the other, right? To
Hmm.
allow us to a better film for less money, less resources, and be able to compete with the big guys, right? Whereas, before it was just studios that were able to do that. Now it's no, we can do it as well. So that's number
Hmm.
one. Secondly, what we're also developing is we want to do AI micro series for online, meaning each episode could be 2 to 3 minutes long, with dialogue and the whole thing. I think that's where AI would be best used for right now. That's I think it has enough legs to give you that.
Hmm.
So you do an online series and self-distribute and so on and so forth. And you could build an IP that way. And let's say your IP takes off, then you can make a feature film. Again, this was the domain of comic book studios stuff, right? Now, if you're an influencer and you've got 100,000 people, 1 million people, 500,000 people, and you get an influencer on board as a producer, for example, and you do a sci-fi series. I like sci-fi, so we're interested in doing some sci-fi stuff. And you push it out. I mean, there's your audience straight away. And once you've built your audience, and again, if the IP takes off, then why not do a feature film, live action feature film? So
Yeah.
yeah, the possibilities are endless. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I say that whoever owns the mob owns the day, meaning that
yeah,
if you own the eyeballs, you greenlight your own project. You don't need permission in today's economy. You just need the
yeah,
audience. You need the masses.
yeah.
Um, who are you a fan of, and who is doing it right now? Who are you a fan of and
Um,
making film right?
there's a company called Promise. There's like two, three companies that have popped up, apart from us, of course. But
Mhm.
there's a company called Promise, that has scooped up half a dozen guys. You can find them on LinkedIn. They're pretty prominent. I think there's a French guy and there's the rest in the US. They got the top guys together and they've got some major backing financially, from a VC fund and also from a big media company that does global distribution. They're not as known as like a Paramount, but they're a big player, right? So they've got these guys on board, and I don't know whether they made them partners or shareholders or whatever. And I think they're still figuring out their thing. But if you look at those six guys, they're pretty much at the top of their game, right? And I'll send you links to all this later. People can look it up.
Yeah,
The
I'm familiar.
difference,
I am familiar with
yeah,
props. Yeah, it's hard not to find those guys. They're amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just did a thing at Cannes. They're kind of the one. I think there's another company called Staircase. I think it is. I think they're called that as well. Is kind of in that realm. The problem. Here's the issue. This is the issue I've had, and I think the issue in general is that there's a lot of people doing AI, inverted commas, right? Um, it seems like everyone's an AI filmmaker on if you just look at LinkedIn now, everyone's like, I'm an AI filmmaker. Okay, so when we started looking to put a team together, what I call our collective, our creative collective, I spoke to a lot of people, looked at a lot of work, but I could tell straight away that they're not filmmakers, right? So there's a big difference between generating a cool 30-second clip that may have been inspired by some movie or whatever that you pretty well just copied, and understanding framing, editing, lighting, and what it takes to make a movie. Those guys stand out. Like the guys from Promise, I can tell they're filmmakers, right? Or at
Yeah.
least commercial. The rest, they're just not. And again, not a knock on them. They're doing some amazing stuff. But the real filmmakers slash AI guys, it's really a handful, right? So that's the difference. And I think they're the guys that are going to shine. we've just taken on a couple of guys, which we're going to make some announcements in the next week or two that are coming. And the links I actually sent you. They're doing some amazing work. And I think they're the guys that will rise to the top quickly because filmmaking is a skill. It's experience. You know, you have to understand sound. You have to. It's those elements don't go away, and AI is not going to replace them for you per se. You know, what you put in. It's fine to put a prompt in, but are you able to assess what comes out as being worthy, if you like?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think I mean, they make it easy enough where you could put in a prompt and something's going to come out, but it's the nuance of it. And then it's the stitching together. I mean,
Yeah,
I've played with it and I've come
yeah,
up with neat little stuff, but that stitching together,
mm,
continuous flow, that is a skill unto itself. And those are kind of the
yeah.
AI technologists that I'm seeing step up in a storytelling perspective that go from like, wow, that's cool to like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Like that was a
Yeah, because
true
the
short film.
filmmakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because filmmakers. Yeah, look, I'm always film first and human first, you know, just so the people listening out there understand it's still the key element, you know.
Yeah.
If you want to make stuff, good movies, good AI movies, you have to understand film, right?
Yeah.
It's still, the basics are still all there. You may use tools to reduce time and make it easier, but the basics are still there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. If you were a filmmaker just starting out today in
Yeah.
2025, what would you recommend the approach be? Would it be film school? Would it be, go on, get on as many sets as you can? Would it be go after self-taught, or would it be, hey, do your own thing, try to learn AI and do your own thing? What approach
And
would you recommend?
yeah, well, film school. I mean, look, I didn't go to film school, so I was always self-taught. I think, you know, you've got a passion for something these days. I mean, if you've got a phone and an internet connection, there's no excuse, right? You can
Yeah,
learn anything. So, sure, if you want to go NYU film school and have that on your resume, it doesn't hurt, right? But I think it's all about the doing. Another thing I think that's critically important that lacks is film history. You should know your films. You know, if you were born in 2000 or 1990, don't just know what happened in 1995 kind of thing.
yeah,
Know where it comes from. Know 60s films, 50s films. Because all the great directors know their shit, right? Excuse the French, but they know their stuff, right? So, because you know, when you're on set working, and if I'm working with a director and he makes a reference, even as an actor or as a producer or whatever, and he says, "Yeah, remember that film that Jean-Luc Godard did in 1960, that blah blah blah, and that scene." You have to know that stuff, right? Because it's some
yeah,
classic films, you know, whether you're talking about Fellini in you know La Dolce Vita, you got to know your references, you know, or Stanley Kubrick, or you got to know the good, like any art, you have to know the lineage of the art. So I think if you know that as a basis, um, I think you need to learn. You know, you need to shoot, whether you're shooting on your iPhone or whatever, just shoot, cut, edit, you know, learn it, do it, put it out there, and just yeah, keep going. You've got there's no excuse now. You have the tools. You can be your own studio. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, definitely. We've never had it easier. I mean, I was reading an article where and this was a few years ago.
yeah,
The camera on your cell phone is like 10 times better than that of the one they used on Citizen Kane.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you
It's
have
insane. Yeah,
to use it.
yeah, yeah.
Kind of the same line in line with knowing
Yep.
your skill set. Are there any books, training, or workshops that you've taken? I'm a big reader myself, but are there any books, training, or workshops that you would recommend people consider?
I mean, I think I just look. What I did was again. I think it's about information, right? If you've got the internet, I would do a search on like if you look at Tarantino, Quentin Tarantino, right? If
Mhm.
I look at a Tarantino film, I know his influences. I can go through his films and say, oh yeah, that's he took that from Godard, he took that from here, he took that. And I don't mean that he took it, he made it his own, but I can see the influence of the scene. So what I would recommend is choose your directors, study them, watch all their films, find books that are written about them, articles, interviews, and then move on to the next guy. And then the
Yeah.
next guy or girl, and the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy. And that's the only way you can do it. You've got to have that knowledge. I mean, reading a book, there's a million books on there of how to make a film and this and that, but you know, it still comes down to having a deep knowledge of something. I think we're in an age of shallow knowledge because, now with GPTs and everything, it's very they don't have the depth of knowledge. And like anything, if you spoke about nuance earlier, about whether AI has nuance, yes and no. It has the nuance you give it, type of thing. So you need that nuance initially,
Yeah.
to be able to put it in to get it out. So anyone studying in film, deep knowledge, watch films, is like, you got to know your films, not just from your era, but and not just from the US. I mean, you got to have it's like art. You got to have an opinion. You got to have an attitude towards, like, I'm into certain kinds of films, and whatever I do, if you know film, you'll see all the influences. You can't be everything. Pick your thing and study it.
The best thing that I did, someone recommended, actually was a class I took. They said go on AFI's top 100 films
Yeah,
and
perfect.
just see how many you can check off. And at the time I was only like at 35, but in a
Yeah,
year I was down to like, I had watched up to like 80 of their films. And I think even today I'm still like at 85 that I've seen.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And look, and people say, well, yeah, that's old school. No, it's not old school. It's film knowledge. If you haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia,
Right.
like, what's your excuse? If you haven't seen Stanley Kubrick's 2001: The Space Odyssey,
Yep.
how would you have a conversation? Because there's certain filmmakers throughout history that have influenced so many of the great filmmakers,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Scorsese, because he was into, you know, French and Italian new wave cinema is a big
Yeah.
influence for him.
Yeah.
Tarantino as well. I mean, you got to know where it's coming from, and yeah, you got to watch the films. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Tarantino was very influenced. I think he was an Italian filmmaker, right? That he did a lot of westerns, and you can really
Yeah,
see
yeah.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Sergio Leone.
Yeah, which is a lot of fun. It's like, oh, like you said, it's
Amazing.
almost like you can see his thumbprint on Tarantino's work. Um,
Yeah, him yeah, and yeah, and also a French director called Jean-Luc Godard from the 60s, who was part of the French New Wave. I mean, even Tarantino's production company is called A Band Apart, which is one of Godard's films.
yeah,
So there you go.
right. Yeah, no, definitely. Um, Most filmmakers when I go and talk to like a college, right? I've done this a couple times right before they get ready to graduate. I'll be invited to speak, and I always speak on the business side of filmmaking because invariably in film school they actually do a really good job of teaching the theory and things. But what they don't do is the business side of filmmaking. And you hit on a main point. I call it a Ronism. Money's not a
Yeah.
problem, it's the problem. And if we had the capital, then we could be talking about greenlighting a project versus theorizing. What are some of the business side of things that filmmakers need to understand in getting their project greenlit?
Um, I mean, everything from the pitch stage through to selling your film. I mean, I just recently posted something on LinkedIn. I think that's how you and I sort of kind of came together. And I was looking for action scripts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did this course looking for action scripts, which we are very specific about what we're looking for. And I was very specific to say, please do not send us your script.
Right.
Please only send it, right? And there's a
Yeah.
reason I did that, because there's this kind of legal issues, copyright issues. So you don't want to be stepping into that water. That just comes from understanding the film business, right?
Right.
So what I've already received a lot of submissions, right? And I'm keeping it open, and I'm trying to look at them all myself, personally, instead of having my team look at it, just to see. And I mean, there's some basics that people are missing, right? In
Yeah.
their pitches, in their this. So you've got to get to know how that works. Second thing is you should understand the process of film funding.
Mm.
Now that process is changing, and we want to change that, right? By crowdfunding and Web3 and tokenization and whatnot. But that's kind of the new wave that's coming down the pipeline. In the meantime, you're still working the old system. The old system is you either, let's say you're doing $100,000 film and you scratch together 100 grand from your friends and family. You shoot your film, you own your IP, you take it to a festival, and Netflix comes along and says, we'll give you 200 grand. Congratulations, you've just made 100% profit on your film. You're a success. And then somebody else comes along and says, okay, that film went really well. We have an actor that can wants to work on your next film. Okay, so now you've got a name. You need some kind of. It's all about leverage at the end of the day, right? You've got a little bit of leverage because you might have maybe a B named actor involved in your project. So how do you raise the money? Well, it's still going to take cash equity. It's still going to take some kind of a sale, meaning maybe you'll do a pre-sale, maybe you'll do some debt financing, maybe you'll do some equity for services financing. I mean, just the financing structure alone, the capital structure of the film alone can be in the old days, and still is for some films, can be an encyclopedia of a legal document. So if you don't understand how all that works, you're going to get possibly screwed over. You're going to sign a bad deal. And, there's still a lot of sharks in the business, just reality, like all business, but there's some, sharky characters out there. So you have to understand the basics of financing, the basics of how do you do a distribution deal, the basics of all those things. And again, they're all available to you now on GPT or wherever, right? But you should understand that even if you're just a very creative person and you're not into that, then partner up with a business manager who understands. But yeah, it's crucial that you know that side of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, film doesn't have to be a solo sport. So I completely agree. If you're not, that's not your main bailiwick, you're more the storyteller, then align yourself
Yeah.
with a business person, business producer, more. Um, what do you what do you say with when filmmakers are doing pitch decks? Do you like to see certain things within the deck that you are seeing or are not seeing? So, for
Yeah.
example, yeah, like some of them I'm hearing lookbooks are the way to go. So keep the financials out. They want the form, feel, and kind of tone. And then some are saying your comparables are like, they're way too high. They're not similar. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about all that. It's look, a lot of and again, generally speaking, like a lot of the pitches I received, a lot of them aren't original. Now, it's hard to be really original, but if your pitch line is going to be a movie that's done very well in the action genre, and I know that pitch line already, it's really probably not going to attract me
Yeah.
because it's yeah, the father's the number of ones that I got that yeah, the daughter gets kidnapped and the father has to go rogue to get the daughter back from the bad guys, right? I mean, that's Liam Neeson's film franchise, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got to find some way of being original, number one. Otherwise, you at a quick glance you say, yeah, I've seen this film 50 times, right?
Right.
Secondly, the thing that stands out for me, because I'm also, a visual artist, is that if you're not putting care into the images you're attaching to your words, you're gonna lose something there straight away. Like if you put a a not so great image on there. My thinking is if you didn't care enough about your image from the beginning, then what are the chances of you making a good film, right? Because it's an image medium. So like if you really didn't think about, and now with AI and everything, like if you didn't really put a lot of care into that first image you're pushing out, then that's not good. That's not good. Um, and then in terms of the comparables, I mean, look, it's like, we can write any comparables we want. I mean, I don't pay that much attention to it in the sense that, okay, I understand if it's an action movie that was made for $10 million, okay, you could say John Wick. John Wick, I think the original one was made for 20 and it made 100 plus at the box office. But then you had Keanu Reeves, all right? So if you don't have Keanu Reeves, then you should make it for five,
Right.
right? But if you make it for five without Keanu, maybe a couple of B actors in there to give you some kind of a name, that's okay. If your concept is strong and your package is strong and it kicks and you make $100 million, then you're a superstar, right? All of a sudden, as a producer or as a director. So you got to think of it that way because the comparables thing is like, great. So you've given me box office numbers. I can look those up myself. But how are you going to convert what you have into that box office? To me, what's more important now is your strategy. And because we're de-shackled from the studio system now with all this new technology, right? There's many ways to get to that $100 million box office. So have you really thought about it as a producer or as a director as to what is your strategy? And again, it goes back to the film code. That's kind of what we're about now. We're saying, okay, if it's $5 million, like we're focusing on action films between $5 and $10 million. With the right circumstances and the right strategy, we strongly believe we can get to $100 million, right? In the game. You couldn't do that before. For all the things we discussed before, the VFX and the this and that and the other, right? So as a filmmaker and you're packaging up, there's that. The other thing is, and this is what we're focusing next to the AI films, is we're offering a film trailer service, right? And what I mean by that is that we'll take a concept and turn it into a trailer, a full AI trailer that you can then to use as proof of concept for your film. Never been possible before, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's your pitch. You got a kick-ass little trailer and say, this is what my movie's going to look and feel like. I mean,
Yep.
you have, yeah.
In fact, I think, there, whether or not you love or don't love AI, to me, that is a perfect use of AI.
Huge, yeah.
It's
It's
perfect
huge.
because it gives
That's
yeah, it just there's so many positives. It just shows if it, I mean, it's got to look good, but I've seen some good ones already and that have
no,
impressed me.
man. Well,
So,
have a look at what I sent you after the podcast, and you'll see what's possible. I mean, it's what we're going to be all about now is the AI trailer thing because it's to me it's kind of mind blowing that you could do 2 minutes. Like I said, the film can use no AI, it doesn't matter. But that trailer, that's your deck, you
mhm.
know. Like if you that's it, that's your deck. If you can invest in that, whatever it costs to get that done and do it really well, and then say, okay, here's some numbers, here's what's involved. That's the next way through.
Yep, agreed.
Otherwise, it's like, okay,
Yeah, you're working in an old paradigm and it needs to be modernized, and that you have
yeah,
these tools before you now, and if you're
yeah.
not going to use them, you're still in the horse and buggy when everybody else is now in the automobile. So,
Yes, but sorry to interrupt, but
that's
yes, but on top of that, it's like you still have to know film.
yes.
Like you still have
Yep.
to know what makes up a good trailer,
Yeah.
right? I've been posting a bunch of stuff recently on LinkedIn about kind of breaking down film trailers and what makes them good.
Yeah.
Picking the ones and the good ones, the John Wick and whatnot, just
Yeah.
to get understand this is what makes a good trailer. So if you're going to do an AI trailer, which we're going to be doing, right, for as a part of our business, it's like you got to know what makes a good trailer, right? Same thing. You need to know film and
Yep.
understand that.
No, I completely agree. Okay, Olivier, I'm going to give you a scenario. This is a real world scenario. Hope you don't mind.
No,
Um,
of course not.
and we'll just, we'll just brainstorm and come up with and have a little bit of fun. If
Sure.
I give you $200,000 right now,
Yeah.
what
Hmm.
what's your play? What would you do in 2025? I give you 200K. Your goal is to make a sellable film. What do you do? Do you try to make a film for that? Do you use it for development? What do you do?
I would, first thing I would do is do the trailer, right? Get the script, start off with a script, strong script. So if you haven't got your script, you're going to have to pay a good screenwriter to do that. That's part
Mhm.
of your development. Once you have a good script to be able to share with whomever, then I would do a trailer, an AI trailer, and put a package together to align with that. Then I would set up, I would set everything up for audience creation. What I mean by that is if you're really dedicated to getting your project done, I would set up your YouTube channel, your this, your social media, your
Yeah.
LinkedIn, your this, that, and the other. Just get everything ready to go. I would tokenize the IP, right? And allow that again, this is all the things that we're going to be doing, right? I'd be tokenize your IP and I would allow that IP to be fundable on um, on some kind of a crowdfunding scenario and kind of go from there. Once you build up a little bit, all that you could probably do for 20 grand, what I'm talking about, right? So you still got 180 left over, right? So with that 180, then I would say, see if you can attract some kind of talent, right? And maybe even make them an offer, like risk 10,000 bucks and put them on hold, so to speak. That gives you leverage. And then you just go,
Hmm.
and then if you if you can raise probably say you can raise another you probably raise another 300 or maybe raise $1 million, you're putting yourself in prime position to be able to go for it. The other end of that scale is everything I've just said, but do something that's for $200,000 budget. Um, use as many AI tools as possible to reduce your costs. Do a film that's kind of one or two locations because that's probably all you can do with 200 grand, and then make something kick ass and use all your tools and then sell it and make the next one. So
Yeah, exactly. Keep
either
that.
way, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
kind of part development, or it could be a full production budget, or it could be any number of things. But there are no limits now. It really comes down to, you know, what you know and how you apply it. Yes, you have to know some people. You still have to know the good screenwriter. You still have to know, or you may already have a script, or at least somebody to assess your script to see that it's, a viable script. Um,
Mhm.
but it's a lot of hard work, just so no one's under any illusions.
Yeah,
It's
no,
a lot.
definitely. And
Yeah,
one of the things that I find that I see in the indie space is that a lot of filmmakers, when they're developing their stuff,
yeah,
they they don't have the proper resources, I would say, to get it
yeah,
to a level that it really needs to be at. They get it to a marginal level and they kind of show it and they start to give you excuses like, hey, this isn't really exactly like how it's going to be. But this, and if you're doing that, then you're already and trust me, every filmmaker is a visual storyteller, and yet when you show me your deck, I'm going to take it as face value. We have a hard time envisioning your vision unless you
yeah,
show me that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Do
Yeah,
you
it's spot on.
do you think star power still matters in 2025?
Um, well, okay, if I can get Brad Pitt to star in my movie, yes, sure, you got
Sure.
it right, but that comes with a lot of complications as well.
Yeah.
Um, but otherwise, no, I don't think it's what it was. I think even when you go to the Cannes Film Festival, it's probably the epitome of star power. Apart from the Oscars, you go to Cannes, there's a red carpet and then all the camera wall. I've done a bunch of red carpets there. It's amazing. You feel like, you're part of something special. So that magic still exists. Having said that, I mean, it's, what do you consider star power these days? Is it the Brad Pitt star power or Tom Cruise? I mean, there's not that many stars left, right? Is it Tom Cruise
Hmm.
or who? Or is it? I'll give you an example of how we're going about that now. I got approached by a screenwriter who's a guy who works in Hollywood, does a lot of stuff that's high, up there. Just randomly approached me and said, "Hey, I've got an idea for an AI film." I go, "Okay." So he pitched me the. I don't want to get into it just yet because we're still developing, but he pitched me the idea, and it was kind of very comedic B movies, all I'll say. And I was like, wow, this is not really my normal thing, but I really like the concept somehow. So I took the synopsis he gave me and I punched it into GPT for I said to GPT, write me a script based on this idea. So it started writing this script, and I thought, wow, this is actually quite funny. We're not with the intention of having GPT write a script, but just to kind
Yeah,
of help
totally.
visualize.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it churned out a couple of chapters, so to speak. I thought this is interesting. I thought then I was like, okay, would this lend itself to merchandising and this, that, and the other. So it gave me a whole plan for all the rest of it. And I said, well, what about a video game? And it gave me a whole plan for a video game. And I was like, wow, this concept is really strong. So I made the deal with the guy, right? We signed a few weeks ago. And then I thought, this isn't a star film. This is like an ensemble film. But I thought, how will I cast this? Okay, there's two roles that I can cast with not necessarily superstars, but maybe actors that are known from, somewhat recognizable. But all the other roles I'm going to cast with influencers,
Yeah.
right? I wish I could give more away, but I can't, right? But let's just say my strategy is this, right? Is I get these two actors, which I know I can get for various reasons. And then I cast the six influencers. They don't have to be amazing actors because of the nature of the film. But if I start off with casting, it's actually 12 roles. But if I start off with 12 roles with influencers in my film, each one has 500,000 to a million followers. I'm starting off the film with 10 million followers already. So I
Yeah.
don't need to start. I've got 10 million followers. So then if I start my campaign from the very beginning of development and pre-production with those people, and we start pushing it out, we're building on that 10, 12 million people. So by the time we get to post-production with a film, we might have a 20 million people audience. So do we need a star in that case? No, we've already got an audience of 20 million people worldwide. See how the game's completely changed, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you need the right project, you need the right this, you still need
Right.
to
Right.
know how to put a film together, but that wasn't possible before. So whereas now I can say I don't need to cast a star, I can just cast my 1 million followers and have 12 million people following the project instantly.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And I always say that you need spectacle. Now that could be an actor or it could be a
Yeah,
strong visual effects. Like I do fantasy and sci-fi for a lot of reasons. One, I love the genre, but two, I also know the audience very well because I'm a part of it and I know I can
yeah,
sell. And both of those genres do really well internationally. Every culture has a dragon in it. So I've been
yeah.
able to do well there and I've been able to do low budget fantasy and there's a
Mhm.
market there. My very first film, I got attached to the Lord of the Rings IP in this really cool, unique way through a video game. And
Yeah,
so we did really well internationally, but that was kind of the spectacle. I mean, if you look at Squid Games, nobody knew who that guy, the main actor was in Squid Games. He
yeah,
was a really good actor, but nobody knew him. It was the conceptualized idea that we all stuck in. And then the quality and the storytelling had to be there for sure. So to me, it doesn't matter as much. I just saw, I think yesterday, Sean Penn mentioned something like Jennifer Lawrence might have been the last,
Yeah,
star, if you will.
yeah,
And I think he's right. I think influencers are, like you said, if you can mobilize an audience, that's
yeah.
really what you need.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, look, it's changed, right? So sure, if you can get Tom Cruise, good luck. If you can't
Yeah.
get Tom Cruise, what are you going to do? You're going to have
Right.
to patch together. But before, the patching together was harder than it is now, I think. And look, underlying everything that we've said in this podcast, you still got to do good work. I just want
Yes.
to
Yeah.
emphasize, you still have to
100%.
do good work, still have to know how to make films. You still have to have your own aesthetic. You still have to have a very strong vision. You still have to be very driven. You still need all those factors. It's not like AI has come along and now it's easy. No, it's not easy. But what's changed is access to the things that we didn't have access to before, and it's very cheap now to have that access, like whether it's VFX or whatever else. So we can compete with the studios now. That's my attitude,
Absolutely.
at least.
Me too, man.
So
I'm with you. In fact, for once, I believe we finally can. There's, Hollywood knows, everybody knows we're in a sense of disruption, but
yeah,
demand has never been higher. We've never been more global, and supply is low. The studios are going to do less films. That's
yeah.
perfect for us to jump in and make a difference. Now is when we're supposed to jump in. Um, how do you personally gauge if a project is going to be successful, or what really gets you excited about a project? You kind of already talked about
Well,
this a little bit, but
yeah. I think look, it's what I like and what somebody else likes is two different things, obviously. Um, I mean, you have to, I think, know your genre, know what you're playing with, and then kind of jump in and make something unique and original. You don't at the end of the day you don't know, but I think if you're going to a project like the one I just described with the influencers, it really is a B movie. I Because I know film, I know the market. I think there's a space for B movies coming back. And I think this will do it. But again, it's not 50 million, it'll be 5 to 10 million. So you got to still figure out, make it for the right money with the right
yeah,
audience, and you'll figure it out and probably make some money. So it's a number of factors, but then it's personal taste. I mean, I love action movies, so I'm doing action movies. Do I like
yeah,
dramas? Sure. And maybe next we'll do some intense dramas, but will I ever make a romantic comedy? No, it's not my thing.
yep,
Right. So
yep.
it depends
Well, I
on
mean, I
me.
think
But
you're in good company. I went to my sales agent buddy, and he's at Cannes right now, in fact, and I said, "What do you need, man? What are the buyers saying they want that you don't have enough of?" And he, without hesitation, he was like, "Action." And then he
low
followed it
budget
up.
action.
Yeah, he followed it up with, sci-fi or fantasy maybe,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
action by far was like the number
Yeah,
one thing.
yeah, 100%. They were talking about that last year too. Everyone was saying, "Who's got low budget action films? Who's got low budget action films?" Because the numbers add up. Because they can sell those, and if it's only
Exactly.
10, then they can make money. If it's 50, sure, then maybe you need Keanu Reeves. But if it's 10, and you make a good movie, then the next one maybe Keanu can do a guest, a cameo or
Exactly.
something.
Well,
Yeah.
where can listeners find you at, Olivier, and connect with you or keep up with your latest work? What's the
I'm
best
on,
way?
yeah, I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So you'll find me under my name, LinkedIn. I'm also, the Filmco is up there. Otherwise, just the filmco.com.ai. And I'm on social media on X and all the rest. You'll find me. Just Google me or whatever, you'll find me. And we're trying to we also we want to build a community of people who are into what we're into. um, I'm Just so you know, if you do reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever, I don't just press connect. I really actually do look at people's stuff and what they post. I want to align with people that are somewhat aligned with us. um, which also I think is a sign of respect for who's reaching out to us, right? We actually do look at your stuff. Same with the scripts, good or bad or whatever, we will actually look at your material. Um, and if we say no, we'll send you a nice little note and we'll give you probably a little bit of feedback, just because it's all a process. That's it, man. We're just onwards and upwards. Already I'm getting a lot of traction, a lot of interesting people in this space that are looking to do things. I think it's exciting because it's new in a sense that it's a new way of doing things. You have to kind of separate the noise from the signal type of thing. There's still a lot of noise out there, and everyone, like when crypto first came out, everyone was doing crypto. AI first comes out, everyone's doing AI. So you have to see where the dust settles and be somewhat discerning as to what you want to do, but definitely a lot of opportunities. I mean, here we are, right? Doing
Yeah.
this. So.
Well, I mean, I've told people this several times. I was like, there's only going to be a first time once for AI, and we're
Yeah,
we're living in it right now. Now's the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um,
Good time.
don't wait. It's never been better. Our chances have never been better. And,
Uh,
in my hypothesis, I think Hollywood is going to throw enough money at stuff to kind of shut the window down for independence over the next maybe 3 years. But right now, for the next 3 years, we have our foot in the door. We have an opportunity like we've never had, in my opinion, to really
and
make our voices
yeah,
heard and get our projects seen and build an audience. I do think that's key.
yeah. I concur 100%. I think people have to also take a cooperative attitude.
Yes, right.
Like, even companies like Promise, the guys that are popping up, I don't really see them as competitors. I see them as collaborators.
Agreed.
You
Yeah.
know, I, I have to work with them in the future, because where a lot of this stuff is still being worked out. But I think the people that really work hard at it will work it out and create some amazing films. So yeah, I'm
Completely
looking
agree.
forward to it.
No, there's
Yeah.
too much stuff out there to be a competitor. We can all win, and now's the time to kind of jump in. And I'm rooting for those guys too, as I am for you and other people doing like-minded stuff. So, well, I
Thank you, man.
appreciate your time today, man. Thank you so much for you, the audience, listening and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment to let me know you're there. It does help the channel. But I believe we are good to conclude with filmmaker and entrepreneur Olivier French. And remember, nothing is wasted. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.